Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sabir, and I direct events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Chasten Buttigieg's new memoir, I Have Something to Tell You, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled, until, after over 93 years, the Strand is a sole survivor, now run by third-generation owner Nancy Bass-Whiten. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers, we wouldn't be here today, and we are so appreciative of it. So, tonight we are beyond excited to have with us Chasten Buttigieg to celebrate the release of his new memoir, I Have Something to Tell You. Chasten was born and raised in Traverse City, Michigan, a thespian, two-time 4-H blue ribboner, and decorated member of the high school bowling team. He received his bachelor's degree in theater and global studies from the University of Wisconsin, and his master's in education from DePaul University. He has worked as a busboy, dog walker, nursing assistant, waiter, cashier, bartender, and most recently, a middle school drama and humanities teacher. He lives in South Bend, Indiana, with his husband, Peter, and their 2 rescue dogs. I Have Something to Tell You is his first book. Joining Chasten in conversation is Mandy Moore, an Emmy, Grammy, and Golden Globe nominated actress, singer, and songwriter. Mandy Moore continues to enjoy versatility in a career marked by memorable performances. Moore can be currently seen leading the Pearson family as the matriarch Rebecca in the critically acclaimed NBC series This Is Us. This role earned Moore an Emmy and Golden Globe Award nomination, and the show received a win for the Best TV Drama Ensemble at the SAG Awards in 2018 and 2019. Additionally, Moore also voices the lead character Rapunzel in Disney's animated series Tangled. In addition to her work in film and television, in March 2020, Moore released her first album in over a decade. Silver Landings is emblematic of the journey Moore has been through in the past decade, what it took to get to the point of re-embracing this part of her life, and the expectations therein. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Chasten and Mandy to the stage.
Hello,
Hello.
my friend.
Hi, friend. How are you?
I'm good. I've been relegated to my attic this evening.
I've talked to you plenty of times from the attic before.
Yes. I think Pete is doing some other, Pete type thing downstairs. I have Buddy and Truman in and out. But most importantly, how are you with all the fires going on in California?
We're hanging in there. I'm all right. Sort of tried to escape a little bit because we're very close to the Bobcat fire. We live on that side of town. And it's scary and smoky and hard to breathe, but what are you going to do? It's part of living on the West Coast, I guess, nowadays. But How are you doing? How are you holding up? How are the pups? How's life?
They're good. We announced today Buddy's lost 10 pounds. So for anyone following along, our Puggle on a weight loss journey, it's official. He went to the vet. Truman's asleep behind me, and we're all just hanging in there. We're doing well. And good. Here we are on a virtual book tour. I wish we were together with all of you. That would have been fun, but at least we get to do these barefoot,
Yeah, exactly. I have sweatpants underneath my dress right now, and no one knows that but me, and the people that are in this room. But
and no one can deny that they've done the same thing.
The what?
I mean, we've all done it, right?
Yeah. Sweatpants under your dress? Who doesn't? How is it though releasing a book in the midst of a pandemic? I know we did talk about.
Yeah.
It feels like many moons ago when this book was sort of forthcoming. I know we talked about like the excitement of going on like a book tour and everything that would sort of encompass. Like how have your expectations been sort of modified, I guess, living in the midst of what we're living through and what this new normal is, and what's it like to release a book during this time?
It's very strange. I mean, of course, it's a bummer. I wish I was, flying around the country and, doing my own thing. Sure. Peter has been very sweet in, all the dinners and the bubbly and celebrating. But the other day I did a hit, I think it was on MSNBC or CNN, and I just did it from my kitchen on a stool. You can't see them, so it's just like a blank screen. And I'm, same thing, like athletic shorts, blazer on up. And I think I would be 100 times more nervous if I was in the studio. You know, some guys like 3, 2, and I was just sitting there in my kitchen like, what's up, America? Because I can't see anyone and I feel no pressure, right? It's just me and my dog in the kitchen. So that's been sort of nice.
Right.
The best part is people's stories, their comments, their reviews that they're leaving. It is strange to spend so much time writing something, and in a way you start feeling disconnected from it because you're going over it over and over and over again. And then people writing things like, I'm so glad you talked about this, or this really resonated, or I really saw myself in this. And it's like, oh, it's actually out there. People are reading it and it's connecting, you know, and that is just, it's such a gift, you know?
I think that sort of speaks to how I want to sort of like jump into all of this. You have this exceptional gift, Chasten, that I think people just naturally gravitate towards you.
Oh.
And it's true. You already have so many fans and champions who I know and I've seen firsthand have sort of been on your side since day one, since sort of becoming a quote unquote public person. And the interest in seeing you take this deeper dive and show us what really makes you tick, it seemed to me, spending time with you and seeing the reaction that people have to you, that this just seemed like the next logical step, like writing a book. But how the heck did this come about? And then to follow that, like, what was the most challenging part of writing a book, and this book specifically?
Yeah, you know, it was shortly after Pete launched, someone approached from the agency and said, we really think you should write a book. And I was like, yeah, right. No way. There's no way. And, you know, I started working on it on the campaign trail. It was cathartic some evenings when you just want to get everything out of your system, long plane rides. And the more I kept going back to the editor, you know, and the publishing company and saying, I just don't think I should write a memoir. You know, I'm 31. It doesn't make sense. Maybe some essays, maybe some reflections. But the hardest part of deciding what it was, what to call it, was letting my guard down. Because in politics, people don't do that. People don't get vulnerable. They don't talk about things like I talk about in the book. And I said from the very beginning, I'm going to talk about all of it because I want people to know me. And I'm going to talk about the awkwardness of dating and coming out and, you know, figuring out who you are and kissing a boy for the first time and, you know, peeling back the curtain on politics and talking to people about how exhausting it was on the campaign. I just want people to sit in those feelings the way I've been sitting in them for 31 years. And Peter encouraged me to write that book. My editor encouraged me to write that book. And I was really scared to, because you write it and then you go to hit send and you're like, I don't know if this is the right choice because my husband's in politics. I guess I'm in politics now. And this could come back to haunt me later, the way I've been vulnerable, the way I've talked about things. So really it wasn't like the writing of, you know, trauma and abuse and things like that are covered in the book. It was deciding to hit send and approve that final draft.
Yeah, I can't even fathom it. It's so bold and it's so brave and it's so indicative of everything we sort of collectively have come to know you as and know you for. But still, it's like, you know, we've been friends now for a little over a year, and it's, I mean, I wouldn't say we're like the best of friends just because we're still getting to know each other, but there was so much that I felt like I learned, and I was particularly so like excited to dig into like some of the earlier stuff in your life. I won't dwell on the Hawaiian shirts because truly no judgment whatsoever. But that was when I was reading the book, I texted you. I was like, this was a fun fact for me. This was something I never saw coming.
One of my best friends from school will just randomly text me this photo she took of me in 7th grade in this like bright orange Hawaiian shirt, round glasses, right? And I'm doing like a very classic Chasten face. I'm like, you know, and it'll just like, it bombs my phone. Like, thank you for reminding me. It
just, that detail for some reason really tickled me. I loved it so much. But So you discuss a lot in the book about sort of growing up in an environment with sort of like this macho, strong attitude that
Yeah.
sort of revolved a lot around hunting and sports. And
Yeah.
yeah, we've heard a lot about you winning ribbons and prizes for raising steer, and you remember 4-H. Being surrounded by all of that energy, you know, did it make you feel different from your community, from your family, from your friends, your neighbors? Can you sort of unpack that a little bit more?
Yeah. It was like a master class in toxic masculinity. I mean, no one wants to be different in high school, right? And the bubble I was growing up in was very toxic and hyper masculine, and your masculinity was equated to your participation in things like 4-H, trucking, jeeping, you know, mudding. And while my brothers were very good at athletics, not as good as me on the bowling team, I will just throw that out there. You know, I was a totally a mama's boy. I spent a lot of time at the Old Town Playhouse. I was into theater. I was into OM. Which is another theater organization. And everything about me, or everything that I was feeling on the inside, no matter what community or what group I was in, just told me that something was wrong, that I had to perform a certain way to blend in. And I was so terrified that people would figure that my biggest secret out. And so I did the 4-H, and I went on Dad's fishing trips, you know, and tried my best to stick my neck out and outperform other people academically and socially, because it was everything that I could do not to be found out. And in a way, I never really felt like I could be my authentic self. And while I got to do many things that I enjoyed, I never felt like I was doing them as my truest self.
Yeah. Well, speaking of your truest self, or your evolution to finding your truest self, one of the parts of the book that I found fascinating was all the time that you spent in Germany. And this was, you know, clearly time away from home, where you made some good friends along the way.
Yeah.
How did that experience change the way that you thought about yourself? And are there lessons, things that you gleaned during that time that still influence the way you think now?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in a way, I think this is a great book for young queer people, absolutely. But I really also think this is a great book for straight people who are wondering what allyship looks like, and maybe what some of that inner turmoil looks like. I went to Germany with this secret, and everything that I had learned growing up in Northern Michigan, in all of the groups and communities I was part of, told me that that thing about me was wrong, and it was twisted, and therefore I was broken. And it was a disgusting secret that I needed to hide from the rest of the world forever. And then I went to Germany. I got a scholarship to go study abroad my senior year of high school. And I was very excited. I mean, I studied German for 4 years, but what it really was a golden ticket out of Traverse City. I really just needed to get out. And I made friends, and like I write in the book, it's not that I found the courage to kiss a boy, it's that I got to drink enough beer to find the courage to kiss a boy and have vulnerable conversations with other people. And I found a group of friends, and I remember talking with a friend about this thing that was just eating me from the inside. And she said, "Oh, maybe you're just gay." And it was so matter of fact that you could just be that, and it was okay. I hope you can hear Buddy just like drunkenly stumbling up the stairs. Hi, Buddy. Thanks for joining us. You know, and I never realized that it was just like a thing that you could be, and it was okay. And that gave me the confidence to go home and come out to other friends and eventually my family. But it's not just a story in finding your truth.
Mm-hmm.
A story in straight people providing spaces for me to feel safe enough to share my truth. And straight people are the reason I'm still here. It's friends who told me it was okay. It was friends who told me they'd fight for me, friends who made space for me, my family who invited me back, right? And it's a testament to their allyship that I went from that suicidal 17-year-old kid to feeling like I could come out and be who I was, or who I am.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to sort of speak a little bit more to that, it obviously goes without saying that just your existence, your presence, what you represent is such an undeniable resource, and inspiration to so many in the LGBTQ community. I mean, you're on the cover of Time magazine with your husband, for goodness sakes. Like, you're really moving the needle. I in that sense, like, what advice would you impart on today's LGBTQ youth, especially those who are contemplating coming out?
You know, I got asked this question every day on the campaign trail. I would host roundtables at local LGBTQ centers or meet with students. And it was always, what advice do you have?
Yeah.
And I wish I would have had someone look me in the eyes when I was, bye, buddy. I mean, honestly, I wish I would have had someone in high school who looked me in the eye and just said, your dignity is not up for debate. And you are worthy of love and space. And I felt so ashamed for 18 years. And every time I would look at these young kids, I would say, you know, it's your journey. It is, and you owe nobody anything, no explanation for who you are. Because I think, and I felt it, right? When you come out, it is like, I have to share this with everyone. I should write a thesis on why I have made this choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're ready to come out, you're ready to come out. And you can share that with the world, or you can acknowledge it and move on and live your life. But you don't owe anybody an explanation. And definitely, your dignity is never up for debate. So when people ask you things that make you feel like they see you as something less than, then you get rid of that. You don't have time for that. That's too heavy to carry.
Yeah. That's profound and so beautiful. Your dignity is not up for debate. I love that. Gonna remember that one. This is something we've bonded on a lot. You have the heart and soul of an artist. And so much of your background and your self-admitted comfort and confidence in who you are, really, so much emanates from your experience in the theater. So in that vein, I'm curious, like, who are some of the more influential people in your life? And how exactly do you think they influenced you to help become who you've become?
Yeah, you know, this is a tough question. I didn't have gay role models. I didn't have anyone really to look up to. The only gay people I saw were Ellen DeGeneres and Sean Hayes on television.
Sure. And
I was so nervous to laugh at Will and Grace because I didn't want my family to, you know, make assumptions about why I might find that joke funny. So I was very hesitant to even watch that show. I didn't have gay role models growing up. And so it's hard when people ask that question sometimes, because it's hard not to have an answer.
Yeah.
Now, who I have become today is definitely rooted in my parents. My mother is a fierce ally. You know, once she asked all the hard questions and figured out this is just who I am, and this is who her son is, and, you know, God made me that way, she was fierce in her support and her allyship. My father is a hardworking man. He's broken his back multiple times on his hands and knees. He runs a landscaping company. You know, he refuses to give up. My parents would drop anything for anyone. They are so giving and so loving. And I think I inherited a lot of those qualities from them. I watched them. They also instilled a lot of lessons of hard work. If you haven't read the book yet, there are some interesting stories there at the beginning, just of how Dad didn't sort of slowly usher us out of the nest. He just kicked us out of the nest, you know, and we flew, but he taught us the hard way, right? And I think that's why in a way, succeeded in theater a little bit because I had already come to the arts with a strong willingness to understand and to connect with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I inherited a lot of that empathy from my parents.
Mm. I haven't had the chance to meet your father, but I have spent some time with your mom, and she is the best. We were just talking about that before we came on. We love her. I know a lot of people want to know more about your relationship with Pete, but you talk a lot about it in the book. You talk a lot about your early courtship days, which I found super, super sweet. And obviously, like the completely normal moment when he decided to tell you that he was going to maybe take a run for president. Not a big deal.
Normal. Very normal.
Yeah, very normal. Very, you were folding laundry.
Just another Tuesday.
I mean, obviously, the campaign sort of immediately folded you into this monumental part of history. Is it something you have fully absorbed yet? How does it feel? I mean, now to be, to have some distance from the campaign and everything that sort of went along with it. How do you feel about all of it?
Well, I sort of thought, when the campaign ended, like your anonymity just comes back and life goes back to normal. It was silly to think. I love teaching because I love helping. I love working with young people. I love teaching theater. I loved teaching middle school. I know that is terrifying for some people, but I remember just how awful those years were, but they are also so crucial. And I just like being a rock for some people. And so when I went out on the campaign trail, I felt like I was able to do that on a larger scale. And even people will just still stop me at Target, right? And they'll just like your students would come to you, after school or before school and share something that they want to talk to you about. People will just come up to me in Target and be like, my son, XYZ, right? Blah, 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 blah. And they like need your advice. And in a way, I love that. I love that people feel comfortable talking about really hard things with me. And I love that I have sort of grown up to become a person that I wish I would have had when I was younger. And part of that, you have to decide how much of your heart you're going to share with the rest of the world. But I am very comfortable sharing it, and I'm very comfortable making space for other people to share. And I love that I get to do that every day. But the campaign definitely changed everything, right? I didn't just get to come home and go back to teaching and that was that. But I love having a platform, and I just want to make sure I get it right. I always want to learn and grow and listen. And in a way, I just kind of feel like I get to be a teacher, but just on a much larger scale.
Yeah. That's what I think was so fascinating about just watching you on the trail and that skill set that you brought to campaigning, which was admittedly like a completely new world for you. I just remember and still stand in awe at the grace you brought to that role. Like you were so adept at it. You were so natural. And I think like bringing those qualities as not only like a comfortable, like, theater major, but also as a teacher, it really reflected your personality. It reflected how comfortable you were in your skin, and it allowed people to really feel like they were invited in. I mean, that's how it always came across to me. It's why I was so enamored by you, and still am so enamored by you. But
I was thinking about this today when I met you in Los Angeles. You came to hear Pete speak at an event. And they were like, and this was like very, very early in the campaign. Yeah. And I was so in my head about who I'm supposed to be, right? What am I supposed to do for other people? And how do you first spouse, right? And I remember that Pete's team was like, Pete has to go downstairs and do like an interview or something, like, would you stay and mingle with people? Mm-hmm. And I was so intimidated by that. And then you came up to me and you were like, hi, I'm Mandy. Can I get a photo? And I told everyone that story. But I think about who I was when I met you then.
Yeah.
And like I write in the book, there was this switch that I had to eventually flip. That I was so in my head about who to be and how to be and what to do every day. And everyone had advice, right? Say this, wear that, you know, from skincare regimens to shoes that you should wear. Like, this is what you have to look like. This is who you have to be. And then I think about when you came to Iowa right before the caucus, and we went around Des Moines, and I think we were at Duke, and we did that student chat, and
Yes, I think about it often.
I look at that person and it's like, that is who I am. And I'm so glad that is what I ultimately decided to be, myself. Because not only were we having fun, and I think I was very open with people. I always try to bring some humor into it. But I'm so glad that the person, the confused Chasten, figured out that the best Chasten to be was just Chasten, you know?
Sure. But how could you not be confused? I mean, I was actually going to bring this up. So we met in Los Angeles because I have a larger question to that that sort of revolves around the job. But we met in Los Angeles. There was an event that Pete was speaking at, and he hadn't even announced his official run. It was just, he was sort of in the exploratory committee phase. And I remember the person who invited me to this event said that you were going to be there. So of course I had to do my due diligence. I looked you up on Twitter. I saw how funny you were, and I was just like immediately struck by your personality, started following you, and then I spotted you at the event, like standing all by yourself in the corner, and I accosted you for a picture. But I remember feeling giddy about all of that. And in the book, and we've had subsequent conversations about this, you talk a lot about finding your voice and coming into your own, especially in regards to social media, which is, whether or not we like it, it is an indefinite part of our jobs.
Yeah.
Do you find it as much of a challenge now, especially now that you're off the trail?
Yeah.
You're talking about your book. Like, do you feel this greater sense of freedom and maybe a little bit more of a relaxed sense, or less of a responsibility than maybe you did when you were on the campaign trail, or even, I guess, just in the beginning of sort of figuring everything out? I'm so curious about that.
Yeah, it's not that I ever felt muzzled, right? I never felt like the campaign was saying, do not do this, you can't do that. I just very well understood the parameters I was working within. And if you've read the book, like I talk about in the introduction, to be a political spouse is to be everything and nothing. So you have to be well-read on the candidate's policies. You always have to know like what Peter has talked about, what he hasn't talked about, because you never want to speak for your husband. You never want to speak out of turn. You don't want to make news, but you also have to be on 24 hours a day, always be smiling, always cognizant of where the journalist and the camera is, but then also be nothing. Do not hog the spotlight.
It's impossible.
Don't make a news story. Don't cause any drama. And I just knew that was the tightrope I was walking. So it's not like I felt like people were breathing down my neck every day, checking my Twitter copy. I just knew that I couldn't say some things because many journalists would just pick it up and run stories about it. I mean, I remember when one of like Mike Pence's minions like tweeted something, and they were like, Mike Pence isn't homophobic. He's having lunch with the gay prime minister of Ireland. And I like very gently pointed out on Twitter, it was like, I've had meals with people who are, would gladly deny me my equal rights. It doesn't mean they're not homophobic. And it was like Breitbart, Fox News, the Hill. It was like Chasten Buttigieg slams Mike Pence for, calls him a homophobe. So you just know, like, whatever you say, Twitter, like literally every tweet is a press release.
Yeah.
And for the first few months, I just felt like everyone was always asking me, like, would Michelle Obama tweet that? And I was finally like, I'm not Michelle Obama. I can't be someone else. I'm just going to be myself. And I like using GIFs or GIFs, whatever you want to say. I like using humor. I like drawing people in. I like peeling back the curtain. I like poking fun at how this process runs. So yeah, now that the campaign's over, I feel like I can say more things just because Pete's not running anymore and people aren't going to run stories about it, right?
Yeah.
And I know social media can be such a dumpster fire. And I love how you use your platform, right? Always trying to elevate the conversation, show up for other people, make people feel good, make people feel seen. Like, sometimes you get drawn into the drama, but like everyone's just talking at one another on Twitter. They're not talking with one another, right? Like, when have you ever seen someone on Twitter be like, wow, thank you, Candace, I've never seen it from that perspective before.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to vote for your candidate now. Like, no one's having that conversation on Twitter.
Yeah, it's hard to have that kind of successful engagement. It's not, I don't think it's a real possibility, but I'm glad to know that you feel a little bit more relaxed these days. Not, and I wasn't implying that you felt muzzled or anything before, but like, I just couldn't, I thought so much about you, and especially in those early days, like there was so much being thrown your way. And again, you just handled it with such poise and such grace, and like still maintained this sense of authenticity that I just, it was very inspiring.
Well, thank you. I remember in the early days, what that launch, that kiss, right?
Yeah.
And everyone was talking about the kiss. And reporters would ask me about the kiss. And again, don't make news. Don't say anything out of turn.
Sure.
But I always wanted to be like, why are you asking me about this? Why aren't you asking the straight people why they're kissing on stage?
Yeah.
But I just knew I couldn't call it out.
Sure.
So now I can.
Making news here, breaking news. Not to get into the weeds about this election cycle, because even though I know it's a very, healthy part of your diet, steady part of your diet, as it is mine.
Yeah.
But I think your message on the trail and in the book, a lot of it revolves around issues that affect the lives of everyday Americans in a personal way, yourself included. Yeah. And I love how particularly there was a lot shaped around healthcare and your mom's cancer battle. And, even your emergency room visit that cost like $12,000 and just added to your debt. Why do you think it's so vital to have these conversations and to bring these kinds of issues up, especially right now?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, all politics is personal. And it is a fundamental conversation. Is my life better or worse based on the person who is elected in office? Yeah. And when I was out on the campaign trail, I just talked about it all. I was like, I'm not political. I didn't grow up political. I never felt, welcome to politics, but politics just happened to me. I grew up gay in conservative Northern Michigan. I watched my mom battle cancer. I have all of these experiences of politics just happening to me. And when we got in Iowa, people aren't talking about wine caves in Iowa. They're talking about crops, tariffs, healthcare, gun safety. There's the Mom Demands Action. Moms there holding you accountable. There are teachers there, healthcare workers. There's the veteran there who wants to know what your husband's going to do about the VA. They're not asking you about Twitter drama. They want to know, are you going to make my life better or worse? And beyond that, do you see me? Do you understand my lived experience right here in Iowa? And if you can't connect with people and convince them, yes, I see you, and I might not get it, but I want to, and I'm going to take your story, I'm going to take it to Washington, and I'm going to make your life better, right? I think that is what politics is. And so if you're spending all day on social media, it's a firestorm. And again, people are just talking at one another. And the way it's designed is to fire you up. It is to rip your conscience apart and make you focus solely on that one person saying that really homophobic thing, behind a picture of a cat. Like, that is not politics. Politics is connecting with people and making them feel so seen and understood that they go into the ballot box and they punch that hole next to your name. And if we're going to win this election, then everyone's going to have to get a little comfortable being uncomfortable. Because tweeting Joe Biden's tweets over and over again helps elevate the dialogue and help spread his message. But it might not convince your neighbor who voted for this president and is now not sure which way they're going to go. You might have to talk to your neighbor about your gay son or your cancer battle or your thoughts about gun safety in schools and education. You have to talk about what's at stake for your personal life in this election, and not forget that there are many people in this country who sort of live in a bubble of privilege and convenience where they don't really have to think about other people's lives. And so it's our job to sort of pop that bubble and say, this is what's at stake for millions of people if we make the wrong choice.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, we have to connect it to our personal lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think your book does an incredible job of doing just that. It was something that really resonated with me. Before I have a couple more questions, and then we're going to take some audience participation. What's something that you haven't been asked a lot about on this book tour, or just in the media, that like you want to talk about, like in regards to the book or your life or anything? And I'm just curious, because sometimes, you know, I'm used to being in that position where you sort of are used to the routine of people asking you. It's, you sort of put yourself on automatic pilot, and you're yearning to just, you know, bring something else into the conversation. So what is that for you?
You know, I talk about my husband so much. You know, I've talked about him constantly for the last year and a half. And what I think this book, I mean, this book isn't about him, right? If you picked it up, I think I saw my friend sent me a review and it was like, there's only like 40% Pete in this book. It's like, well, yeah. You know, this book just isn't about reflections on 2020. I think what this book is, at the end of the day, is a conversation about hope and about showing up for one another. And like I mentioned at the beginning, it's not just for queer people. I think straight people, there's a lot to learn in there about the ways in which we show up for one another, and the way we go about making space for other people, and what can happen when we truly make space for other people to feel like they can be their truest selves. And I say that because I write about it in the book. When you love someone, you expect that they know that you love them. But allyship is so much more than having one another's phone number and going out to brunch. You have to look at the people in your life and truly tell them, I love you. I love you for exactly who you are. And if you ever want to tell me anything, I will be here for you. And that's for parents talking to their children. It's for teachers talking to their students. It's for family members talking to family members. I felt so alone for 17 years because no one ever said that to me. And when people did say that, when they opened up and said, I'll fight like hell for you, Chasten, and I'll love you just the same. If you've read the part about my grandmother in the book, it changed my life. Because I thought, you know, in the back of my head, I know these people love me, but what happens if they don't? And what happens when someone looks at you in the eye and says, I love you, and I'll be right here for you. And the shoulder is always there for you, to lean on, to cry on, whatever you need. And I think many times you see in this book how other people showed up for me and made space for me and allowed me to become who I am today, because other people took a chance on me. This is not a like glossy, like I grew up gay out in the sticks and then I pulled myself up by the bootstraps and like, here I am. You know, that's not my life story. Life can be muddy and confusing and heartbreaking. And all of that can be much easier if we make sure that people around us know that they can come to us, you know, for anything.
Yeah. I mean, I just think there's nothing more powerful than giving someone permission to be themselves. And that's exactly what your book has done, and given way for people to just truly kind of be their authentic selves. I mean, as you know, a sister of two LGBTQ brothers, it gave me a greater sense of understanding and empathy and what it means to be an ally and to be as supportive of family member of them as possible. And even my brother-in-law actually reached out to me man, just a couple nights ago, and had just finished your book and was like,
Oh.
I feel like his story is my story. He was
Oh.
so deeply touched. And this is a, 40-year-old man who's been married for 12 years and, is comfortable in his skin. But it was so enlightening for me to hear that from him as well. Like, his story is my story. And it gives him, greater sense of purpose out in the world. So I know that's what your story gives people permission to do that. And before we dive into audience questions, I just have one more very random, not remotely serious question, but you were a Starbucks barista. I wonder if that makes you now a bit of a coffee snob. Like, what's the coffee situation? Because I am a self-admitted coffee snob. Like, what's the coffee situation?
Sure. I mean, it's so funny when I go to Starbucks with my mom, and I'll maybe order like an iced coffee with like a pump of something and like a splash of milk. And she'll be like, meh, 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 meh. Like I ask for two things, but it is like very different world. It was very hard for a long time when you've worked at Starbucks for years to like watch other people make your drink at Starbucks. But like, here's my large message about Starbucks. Give your barista a break. Honestly, I have seen the worst in humanity working at Starbucks and wearing that green apron. And I don't know if that part made it into the book. I remember talking about it. Like the woman in the airport who was just like berating. And it was like, sometimes, okay, for everyone watching, you might have to step in. Like you might have to step in because they're human beings. Your baristas, your waiters, your bartenders, they're human beings.
Sure.
And I got to be honest, like when you treat people like garbage, they're probably going to make your drink like garbage. Like, come on now. You're asking for, a milkshake and you're treating me like, ugh, don't get me on my soapbox about Starbucks. But
sorry. No,
no, for everyone.
To go down a rabbit hole, I just was curious about your coffee situation at home because I'm a coffee snob, and I feel like if we were surrounded, like, are you expected to make like latte art at home? Like, what's the deal?
No, Pete and I are very different, but we have everything, right? Like we have the pour over, the French press, the Nespresso machine, the regular brew pot, like everything, like our whole counters, like whatever you want. And then I'm an iced coffee person. Make some iced coffee. And I like milk in my coffee, and Pete's just like black coffee. You could just like ground up cigarettes and pour hot water on, and he'd drink it. Like he does not he does not care about coffee at all the way I do. But oh well.
Such is life. No, it's interesting. It's very telling how people feel about their coffee. So it's good to know. Good to know about you. Let's jump into some of these questions from folks here. This is something that I know the answer to. Chasten, I heard a rumor that you and Mayor Pete are board game nerds. Is that true? If so, what is your favorite game?
Sort of. Although I feel like we really need to branch out. But we play a lot of Risk and a lot of Ticket to Ride.
What's Ticket to Ride?
Mandy, we'll have to do this offline. There's a whole game. You're gonna love it. You can play on the app. Great game. Easy to learn. Fun for everyone. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna hold you to that. We tried to do Risk for a second, like kind of early days in quarantine. I bowed out right away. It was just the three, my husband and you and Pete, and it was pretty fantastic. Like, it's just fun to see, like what competitive edges, like people, what sort of bring out in people. I love that.
One night, Peter and I got for Christmas, we got each other Game of Thrones Risk, and we like dimmed the lights and we had wine and we like played the Game of Thrones soundtrack and like got into the zone. And I love that about my husband, that he will go along with that.
He's game for it. If you could star in a Broadway, this is a good one. If you could star in a Broadway musical, what role would you play and why? Well,
I can't sing to save my life. one time a professor tried to get me to audition for a musical in college, and I cried during the audition. I think I would.
Let's say you could sing. You could sing. Like let's not. That's not barring you from being able to do a musical.
If I could sing, I would feel very confident going into an audition for Seymour in Little Shop of Horrors. I feel like I've got the glasses already.
I can see it. Suddenly Seymour. God, what a good show. I love it. I love it. Let's see. What are some other good ones? Oh, how about, did any books, movies, or music have an impact on your life and or help you in your journey to coming out, finding your identity?
Oh, yeah. Well, so it's funny. We talked about Ellen and Will and Grace, and those were like the two, right? Like it was on TV, but it was like so cautious. Like, oh my God, Mom watches Ellen sometimes, but I don't know like if that's a good thing, or maybe she doesn't know she's a lesbian. And like, that's all I could see. And then I went to college, and when I started studying theater, when I went back to theater, I took this course. It was like American cinema or whatever. And we watched Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Oh. And then we talked about how the film is very different from the play, right? We read the play, watched the movie, and how the conversation about Brick is very different in the movie, and that like Brick is actually gay, right? Mm-hmm. And I was sitting in this film class and I was like, hold on. You're saying like we could interpret literature and film and drama as in like someone could be gay and that's fine? And then I took like depictions of gays in American drama class, and I read, you know, The Normal Heart and Angels in America, and it just like opened a whole new world for me, because I was still like total like blinders on, like had no idea that there was even like a queer world out there, that there were queer playwrights and authors, right? And it just like college just like shattered that wall.
Oh, thank God for theater, right?
Yeah. I also had a professor who like slipped me a DVD of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And she was like, I think you might like that. And that was like her way of being like, if you ever want to talk, you know, I'm here. God love her.
I've never seen Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
Oh, you should see it.
I know. I need to rectify that. Okay, Pete wrote about the adoption of Truman. Can you tell us about how Buddy came into your lives?
Oh, he gives me so much crap for this. I saw Buddy on the website for Pet Refuge here in South Bend. I loved him right away. And I went to look at him without Pete. And he was so sweet in his cage, and he was like climbing up onto my lap, and he's only got the one eye, right? And he's like super overweight. And they're like, he just needs a lot of like TLC, you know? And he had been there for like 6 months. And I just fell in love with him. And so I think I went back again to see him, and then told Pete about him. Like, I really think this could be good for Truman. So we brought Truman there to see if they would, you know, be okay around.
If they were compatible, sure.
They were totally compatible. And so we went back into the building, and she's like got the folder out and everything. And I just like put the credit card down on the table, and he was like, oh, are we like doing this now? I was like, well, yeah, why not? Like, are you going to let this puggle sleep one more night in that cage? Like, we're taking him home. And he whined in his kennel all night, because we were trying to slowly introduce him to the home. And we had to let him out of the kennel, and he ran right upstairs, right up onto our bed. And that's where he is every day now.
Just meant to be.
It's meant to be.
Pretty much. Gosh, what else? Oh, there's some funny questions, friend. Okay, you mentioned a lot of the advice on the trail. Skincare, what you wear. What was the worst piece of advice or the most ridiculous thing that you were given?
Oh, I don't know if it's ridiculous, but I do remember, and I feel so bad. This woman gave me a giant box of books. And she's like, I really want to donate this to your classroom. And we're like, oh, you know, I'm out on the trail, and I'm like flying to like 5 different states. Like, I can't take, you know, carry-ons only on the campaign trail. Like, what do we do with this massive box of books? We eventually found a place to donate them. But like right at a rope line, saying hello to a bunch of people, and she's just like, here are books.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely an odd gift for someone, but thoughtful. Oh, how about this? How is the experience of recording the audiobook different than writing the book? Did you have any moments where you were like, oh my God, I can't believe I wrote this? Is it too late to edit this out? Or did you find certain parts harder to read, maybe more cathartic to read?
Yeah.
What
Well,
was
I'm very different from Pete. So I wrote a lot of the book out loud. I would dictate, or I would go on walks and tell stories, or just record myself telling stories, because I wanted the book to feel conversational. I wanted it to feel like people were, grabbing a drink with me and just telling my story. And I noticed that the stories came out very differently when I was like pacing the room and pretending I'm, telling a story in front of friends versus in my head writing it down. So reading it out loud was just the first time I had read it out loud front to back. And I remember stopping at one point. I was like, I swear a lot. Like, no one flagged that for me. I did not notice. So I'm really sorry, but,
No, it's just passion. I love it.
just passion.
It's passion coming through. What was your favorite moment on the campaign trail? Or from the campaign in general?
Yeah, there were, everyone has a story and everyone is wonderful. There was a girl, Bridget, in Iowa, who met Pete before I got to meet her, opened up to Pete about her autism and said, like, I'm not going to live ashamed of who I am anymore. And like, you've inspired me to just live my truth and be who I am. And we got to see her many times on the campaign trail. There was this really wonderful family in New Hampshire that followed me. Like, anytime I came to New Hampshire, they were there volunteering, and their son was on his own identity journey and needed a lot of advice about what to do with a homophobic school administration. And so eventually these people started to feel like family. Every time you came, they'd show up and you'd see them, you'd, connect. And it's just whenever someone would like go in for a hug, and like people would break down and they'd be crying and they would whisper these things in your ear, like, I just came out to my family, or, I finally came out after 70 years, or, just these most personal things. And you're working at Roadblock, there are thousands of people and you want to spend time with everyone. But when someone sees themselves in you and feels so comfortable opening up to you for 10 seconds, it truly was the wind in my sails every day, knowing that you got to show up and be that person. Because there were some really hard days, but then you would get out of the car and go into the center and you'd meet kids who really needed to see you that day. And it was all special. It was wonderful.
Oh, yeah. I can't imagine. That's such a tremendous sense of responsibility day in and day out. But
yeah,
it helps when you're sort of buoyed by meeting people like you just mentioned and hearing their stories. It's like it does help you keep, continuing to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Chasten, you're such an inspiration to so many. How do you motivate yourself when you've hit a roadblock? That could be creatively, emotionally, anything. How do you power through?
I'm a roller coaster. I'm a true Cancer. I'm all in my feels. Pete, like, if he needs to recharge, he like reads a book and pours a whiskey, like clockwork, right? And for me, it depends. I might want to watch like Real Housewives and eat a pint of Ben and Jerry's. I might want to like jump on the Peloton. I might want to go for a walk with the dogs. I call friends a lot. And just saying things out, especially on the campaign trail, I felt so, the world was going so fast, and then just talking to a silly friend, talking about their day. But when I hit a roadblock on the book, sometimes I was like, well, I don't got it. And then sometimes I kind of pushed through the pain, like talk about the thing that you really know. Or talk about things that are never going to make the book, but might feel really good to put on the page. A lot of those chapters went in the shredder and never made it to the book, but it helped me process a lot of things, right? I think we put like, I can't stare at a cursor on the page. Like, that just intimidates the hell out of me. So I do a lot of talking, clearly. But get out of my head, because you can just ramble and then eventually you find the good stuff.
Yeah. That's like part of the creative process for any writer. It's you have to put your, as they say, your butt in the seat and just do the work and show up. And I think that's like the catharsis, is just writing something and then you can edit it later.
Yeah. You just have to start.
God, there's so many questions here for you. What flavor Ben & Jerry's?
Ooh, very basic Cherry Garcia.
Oh, classic.
Yeah.
Classic. Let's see. So many good ones. What's your favorite place to go or thing to do when you're home in Michigan?
I don't want to give it away because it's off the beaten path. I love the Sleeping Bear Dunes, the National Lakeshore. Gorgeous hiking. And then there's so many great wineries. I can't wait until we can go back to sitting on a patio and drinking a glass of wine. I love the water. The water, even though
You're scared of the water?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I can't swim alone. Terrified of dark water.
Well, sure, that makes sense. But like,
My father, I watched Jaws way too young, and he used to always pull my legs under the water when we were swimming. Still gives me the EBGBs. But I love like just getting outdoors.
Yeah. Michigan seems like the ideal place for that. All right, I'm just going to ask you a few more questions and then we can wrap this up. What do you suggest regular folks who don't have a lot of public influence can do every day to support the LGBTQ community?
Well, allyship is performative. So if you feel like you're not showing up for people, you're not having those conversations, you're not providing space, if you're not mentoring or tutoring, put your money where your mouth is. I mean, there are so many people who need your help. So if you can donate, please donate, do your research. And then also that they need, sometimes they have food drives or clothing drives. They need help organizing closets at the center. But allyship can be more than just saying like, I love the LGBTQ community and I support the LGBTQ community. That also can show up in your volunteerism. And then please don't shy away from having uncomfortable conversations when you hear people say something that needs to be checked.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last but not least, before we wrap this up, what advice would you give to young Chasten?
Yeah, I did a podcast this morning and gave that answer. It's on my Twitter timeline. Many times in writing the book, I thought about young Chasten, especially. And I remember very vividly one afternoon sitting in front of my dad's gun case and just feeling like, there's no point. But I also just wanted to know what good felt like. I wanted to know what love felt like. And, would I ever fall in love? Would I ever be married? Would I ever have kids? Would I ever feel comfortable in my body? And gosh, I wish I could just go back and tell that kid, like, just you wait. And I know that, that phrase, it gets better. It sounds like bullshit sometimes when the world just seems so crushing. But it did, and it does. And it might not seem like it right now because you might not have found your people yet, but your people are out there. And they can't wait to meet you. They can't wait to celebrate you. And sure, the bad felt terrible, but the good was so good. The privilege to love someone else and be loved by someone else and to find community and purpose. I wish I could go back and tell him, like, you are not going to believe the things you're going to
do. Just you wait. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your warm, loving, approachable, candid, hilarious, vulnerable book and sharing so much of yourself. I mean, as someone who knows you a bit and who really just adores you, it's like I finished the book with this deep breath and I remember thinking like, this person is bound for so much. I
Oh,
cannot wait to see what he does next. And I just want to congratulate you on your New York Times best-selling memoir, friend.
and I
That is
didn't have to leak any secrets about Donald Trump.
that is a badge you get to carry around for the rest of your life now. So you deserve it wholeheartedly. Thank you for letting me have this conversation with you. Congratulations. And thank you all for joining us today, too. This was so much fun.
Thank you, Mandy. Please stay safe out there. We are all thinking of you. And thank you, everyone, for watching and for believing in this book and the story. I'm so touched that you purchased a copy. If you have the ability, I hope you'll make sure it gets in the hands of someone who you think could use it. Or donate it to a center that might need a copy. In a way, I wrote a book that I wish I would have had when I was younger. So if you think you know a place that could benefit from a copy of this book, I hope you'll consider that. And thank you to the Strand for hosting us. I know it's a bummer not to be in person, but I really appreciate you making the time for Mandy and I to have this conversation. So thank you, everyone.